lots of demands.
What's the age? Ages?
2 and 5.
Oh my God. Yeah. 2 and 5 together.
Oh yeah, you only had one.
Yeah, one and done. One and done.
Yeah, there's something to that.
Here, here. Yeah. It's okay though.
Both of you know.
Yeah, Sarah? Okay, thanks very much. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. And I'd like to start the meeting off with the Aboriginal Acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa, Silix, and Sinixt peoples, and is home to Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honour the connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. And with that, I'd like to know if there's any late items, Councillor Woodward.
Yes, I would like to, late item. Would you like me to talk about that now?
Yeah, you can just let us know what it, more or
Okay,
less in a few words.
it's regarding whether or not Nelson could give a monetary gift or help basically with the Ukrainian crisis. So I'm just putting it out on the floor. It could be that we could get staff to look at the best possible sort of way of doing that. I was just wondering if there was something that Nelson could do as a city.
So you're going to bring that forward as a motion, so we'll add that to the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. So we'll put that on as under late items, number 13.
Thank you.
Councillor Woodward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicole.
Okay. Adoption of the agenda as presented with the, oh, sorry, Nicole, did you have something you wanted to?
Well, I think what Councillor Woodward is asking for is that we acknowledge today that it is International Women's Day.
That's what he was asking.
And it was thought that maybe a woman should do the acknowledgement, which is fair enough. I do maybe in this moment want to make a call out to any ladies out there who might be wanting to show some leadership in our city, and there is an election coming up in less than a year. So on International Women's Day, I make a call out. Hey ladies, think about running. Thanks.
Thank you. Excellent. Thanks, Nicole. All right. With that, I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda with the addition of the late item. Please. Councillor Lochtenberg and Councillor Renwick. All in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. Adoption of the minutes of the previous meetings, the regular meeting of February the 8th, 2022.
Move.
Moved by Councillor Woodward, Councillor Charlwood, second. All in favour? Carried. Recommendations from the Committee of Whole, there are none. And the first item up is the Strata title conversion of 912 Stanley Street. And we maybe get a staff report on that if you wish.
Yep, definitely.
Natalie, thank you for being here.
Yeah, definitely, of course. So this one is kind of an interesting one. They're actually reapplying to stratify the building. In 2011, they applied to stratify a triplex, and it was approved by council. They moved on, the units were sold. It's actually a really great example of a strata title conversion. It has 2 fronting Stanley Street and 1 in the back. And I think you can see some of the pictures in there.
Yeah.
At a later date, sometime in 2017, the owner of Unit A applied to do a basement renovation to take like a crawl space and make it a habitable basement. They later discovered that was actually limited common property and not specifically associated with Unit A. And so they went and talked to lawyers in Land Title's office. The only way to fix this issue is actually to cancel the existing strata plan and reapply for a new one, and that requires council approval again. And I'll just highlight for council, there's no renovation planned or no additional units. They've just had the property resurveyed and allocated the spaces kind of accurately. There are a few other errors they found out too.
I'll move the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Woodward, second by Councillor Charlwood. Sorry, Councillor Leuchtenberg, second by Councillor Charlwood. Okay, any further questions or comments from council? Councillor Woodward.
So this is essentially just a document change, not a physical change.
Exactly. It's an administrative
It's an
process.
administrative process. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
exactly.
Okay, all in favor? Carried, thanks very much. That was easy.
Oops.
Next up is Hillside Road Standards. This is an interesting one. And are you going to speak to this one as well, Natalie?
Yeah, if council would like, I can give a bit of a background on it.
Yeah, please.
So Development Services is bringing forward amendment to the Subdivision and Development Servicing Bylaw. Currently, we do not have hillside road standards. The current standards kind of assume a more gentle terrain. Obviously, we're built on a mountain, so it can be challenging for development to move forward. I will kind of highlight to council that the bylaw was amended in 2018 to give the Director of Public Works the ability to vary the standards in the bylaw based on a number of conditions like terrain, infrastructure, or existing conditions. But staff felt that it would be appropriate to actually put in hillside development standards that will provide clarity to applicants. What is the standard I need to meet? And it'll ensure that we're not ad hoc, varying standards, so it's more consistent in the city. These standards would only be applicable in topography exceeding 20% grade. So we're really talking about steep sections of the city. And if they are going to use these standards, they have to submit a report just talking about slope stability, retaining walls, utility layout, driveway layout, cut and fill slope, snow storage. And I just want them to think about that early on, just to ensure that there's good planning, because later when we try and add those things in, it becomes problematic. I'm just trying to ensure successful development. These standards have been based on best practice review from other municipalities with similar topography and also climate. And basically they have a reduced right-of-way width. It's reducing it 3 meters, and a slightly narrower road from 7 meters to 6.6. And I just want to be really clear, we don't anticipate that these will be throughout the city, just in a few select locations where it's kind of at the edges of the city with steep terrain, limited development nearby, and where standard roads really are not achievable. And given the smaller roads and the steeper terrain, 30-kilometer speed is proposed. And these standards were developed in collaboration with Public Works, Fire and Emergency Services, and Nelson Hydro.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Page first.
Should I move it?
Yeah, you could if you wish, yeah.
Okay, I'll move it.
Councillor Woodward, second by Councillor Page. Okay, you can go ahead.
It's just kind of a question of curiosity around that 30K. I thought it was understood that we have 30K, 40K for the city, and we weren't able to vary it outside of school zones and other special areas of interest. How do we have the ability to modify it in some areas for some reasons? Like, what is the clarity there?
My understanding of it, my understanding of it was, it's just that you have to post the 30-kilometer sign at certain intervals throughout the development, because then otherwise it's not enforceable. And so I think in these locations, if they're going to come up with a development, that would be 5 to 10 lots or something like that, we could have them install that signage in that section where appropriate. If that kind of makes sense. That was my understanding. It's just about the signage. Otherwise, it defaults to 50 kilometers an hour if there's not signage indicating that it's slower. And I think it's that the police officers have to understand that you saw a sign that said differently. That's my understanding.
It was
Yeah, I like that one.
8 more questions.
I didn't see the sign. Officer. Councillor Leuchtenberg.
Yeah, just for clarity through the chair, that was a resolution we were looking to apply citywide speed control,
Cycling.
which we don't have the power to do that. We do have the power to do localized speed control. It was a UBCM resolution.
Yeah,
put forward.
because it's 30 kilometers on High Street right now.
Provincial.
Yeah, you can't.
We localized
Vancouver applied for this. It was a thing that we did 2019.
Good. Any further, Councillor Charwood.
Thanks, Chair. I have a couple questions, but maybe I'll try to ask a high-level one in hopes that it answers some of the other questions I have in terms of, like, I'm hearing we want to push some development upslope. I just this week saw a presentation by local hydrologists and ecologists that talk about over 20%, there's a lot more risk to adding a road, the changes that can bring in terms of runoff and other concerns like that. So I see a lot of checks perhaps in this list. Could you speak to that kind of, so for example, if there's going to be development and some trees need to come out, what effect will that have on slide potential, for example? Are the reports coming to us before the property gets, right? So some of those considerations in the reporting that's required to the city?
Yeah, definitely. No, those are good points and good questions. Slope stability is definitely a concern of ours, and most subdivisions, almost all of them, come with a geotechnical report. And if we're worried about slope stability, they can also look at landslide and flooding, and they will also talk about like existing conditions and then post-development. So it'll all be done through engineers. Yeah, and the steeper the slope, definitely the more challenging the site and the more factors that need to be considered. But yeah, it'll all be done by engineers and conservation.
Follow-up
Yeah,
question?
absolutely, yeah.
Do we not have a geotechnical report coming due to us? Isn't there a broader assessment of town happening currently? Am I remembering that
Question
correctly?
So the regional district has done sort of the broad look at all the creeks in the whole area. There's some mapping that's specific to Nelson, and we are just currently looking at that and determining what additional work we should do. Right now, we're identified as low risk, but we're going to look at that, their report and work with a geotech to determine should we be doing additional work. So that's where we're at.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Just for interest, we have a number of streets in our community that are already been built, like Traverse Street, Oak Street. Cal, you lived there for a while. As an example, Selby Street. Anything we've gone mainly above the hospital area, Janice, right? And Hughes Street. All of those have been on steeper. And even below that, there's a lot of steep properties that haven't built in the past. The question I would have, though, Natalie, is with the narrowing of the roads, which I understand, what requirements then would there be for off-street parking, as an example? Because I notice on some of the streets that are already somewhat narrow because of the terrain. Like the houses are way up there and the driveways are not drivable in the wintertime, and then they become a challenge for snow plowing and so on.
These standards, as well as the rural standards, they don't accommodate for on-street parking.
Yeah.
And, that's mostly the challenges with the terrain. Depending on the scale of the subdivision, though, if it's smaller, they're not going to accommodate on-street parking. But if it's larger, maybe they can carve out an area for parking. So we'll always work with them because we realize that is an issue on some of those roads, especially in the winter. They get pretty narrow.
Yeah, Fort Shepherd's a prime example. Fort Shepherd Drive would be.
Yeah, exactly. It's just really tricky on the steeper slopes, but we try our best.
So, if you don't mind, like our boundary, like we're already building within most of our boundary anyway. For the most part, there's maybe a few little pockets that aren't built on. So most of the roads for the most part, are already built within the current boundaries of the city. Right? But this gives some clarity to anybody in the future that's.
Exactly. Yeah, there are still a few, undeveloped parcels that this could apply to, and this is going forward as well. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. All right, so we have two recommendations here. We'd have to do them separately.
Sorry, John.
Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Got my gears turning. Oh, I guess this is going to go this way. In the context of that, that we're building within, that we are establishing the standard to address the situation we're seeing and understanding that the city has, jurisdiction now, but those change over time, things that we may one day inherit. How do we pass this how do we communicate with the RDCK about aligning these kinds of standards, if even appropriate, or even having those conversations so that development that might be happening just on the other side of our border is what we would think is the best if we someday in 50 years decide to make that part of the city and we don't end up with a hodgepodge.
I think MOTI sets the standards in the rural area.
Okay.
So it'd be working with them, and I think it's good regional planning that, what's your growth, where do you see growth happening? And if they know where that, where we anticipate growth happening, hopefully they're building towards that growth. But right now, you're right, there's no real planning. They will have their standards and build to their standards, but most of the time, well, they are rural standards, right? Probably don't even meet our rural standards requirements. So it is a problem.
So am I hearing, though, that it would be one set of standards for the whole province, or do they specifically have best practices in this area? Like, do we have any place to influence that?
I think it's provincial, right? Their standards would be. I don't know for sure. We can find that out.
I don't want to put anything on the plate, but
Well, there's a couple of new subdivisions developed in the last few years where you're living, Kevin, at
Yeah.
Osprey Heights, so you could find out from that one, or Grandview Heights out on the North Shore there. The roads to those two subdivisions are noticeably wider than, as an example, where you live on Ridgewood.
Yes.
Jesse.
Yeah, I
pretty
know.
small.
My subdivision, it was the developer that
But the roads-
built to a standard, and he built greater than their standard. In fact, they weren't super happy. He had built it as wide as he
Because they have to
did.
plow it.
Well, and maintain it afterwards,
Yeah,
right? So, yeah, so I believe they have their standards. I assume they will vary them based on, the particular subdivision, but I'm pretty certain they're gonna have a rural standard across the province based on, what volumes of traffic, et cetera, they'd have. But certainly in places like where we live, just as we're doing, sometimes you can't achieve those, and I'm sure they work with developers to make that happen.
okay, thanks.
I think the price of property now probably allows for these things to happen because, some of the, like, even Hall Street at the top end of it is more than 20%. There's a lot of Morgan Street as an example. If you went up Morgan, it's more than 20%. And they've been streets for 100 years, right? But so. Yeah. That's it. Okay, so the number one is that the Subdivision and Development Service Amendment, Hillside Road Standards, Bylaw number 354, 2022, be introduced and read a first and second time by title only.
Moved.
Councillor Morrison, Councillor Renwick.
Oh, it was already moved.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, good. Number one was moved, good. Thank you. All in favor? Can we use the same two movers then for the next one?
Sure.
That the Subdivision Development Service Amendment, Hillside Road Standards, Bylaw number 3544, 22 be read a third time by title only. All in favor? Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you.
It was so quick, you can go hang out at the coffee shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go to coffee.
I'm not going home.
I'm calling Justin.
Over on 10.
Can be your backup if you need it.
He's watching the live stream.
Go enjoy your dinner.
Bye.
Okay, the next one's a UBCM training grant that we're applying for. And Nelson Energy Management is applying for UBCM grant funding to further support the development of the city's Energy Operations Centre. Emergency Operations Center. And there's a staff recommendation at the bottom. If somebody wishes to
I'll move.
support. Councillor Charlwood and Councillor Woodward. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Next is late items, so, no, sorry.
No, we
information
better
on
accept
late
the
items. So
minutes and reports.
The minutes
receipt.
and reports. So Cultural Development and the Public Library Board. Anything you wish to pull out of those two sets of minutes, now's your chance to say so or forever hold your peace. Move receipts, somebody please. Councillor Page and Councillor Renwick, all in favour. That's the minutes of the council commissions. Okay, and now we have reports. And the angry Rusty Moose still hasn't resurfaced on the minutes.
It's like from Janice, it might be coming.
Janice, where were you?
Yeah, it could be.
The casino's on here now. Building permit stats. Still plugging along there. We should have kept Natalie around to talk to us a little bit about this, but looks like we're still as busy as ever. Anybody want to move receipt? Councillor Renwick, Councillor Lochtenberg, second. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Late items. Councillor Woodward had a motion.
I did. So with what's going on in Ukraine, I was wondering about whether or not the city of Nelson could make a financial donation. I think that's what I was thinking of. Corporate officer suggested that we could just make a request that staff look into what would be the best way that a municipality could help out. I'm not sure. Maybe I don't know a good way of doing that. And the other element of it, as I thought, if we could find a good way of doing that, we would challenge other municipalities to match what we're doing, and maybe get a bit of a wave going across.
So would you like to make a motion to that effect? And
Yeah.
maybe if you wish, put a number on it as well.
Wow, put a number on it, eh? I kind of had in my head $1,000.
Yeah.
I thought would be a fair sum, and so I guess the motion would be to
Let the city of Nelson donate
donate $1,000
to a registered property
registered mainstream organization to help
relief.
with relief in Ukraine, and could staff look into what would be the best way of doing that?
And challenge other municipalities.
And
And challenge other municipalities, I thought you wanted.
challenge other municipalities to do the same.
To meet or exceed.
Local governments, sorry.
local
yeah.
governments.
Local governments.
And I do think, you know, even our own community,
So,
put this out there and
got a seconder? Second, okay. All right, Kevin, so community members could do the same, right?
I think I'm just trying to get a little
Going here.
something going, because I think a lot of people like myself feel sort of a bit helpless.
Yeah.
And maybe this could help people find a way.
Excellent, okay. Any questions or
we all
comments or?
in for the first donation.
Yep.
It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah,
I guess,
right away, get his money
It's
right.
$1,000 right there.
Okay, all in favor?
Well,
Carried, thanks very much, Councillor Woodward. Sarah, one more job for you there. Good, thanks, Sarah.
thank you,
All right.
thanks, Jesse.
thank you.
Notice of motions, there are none. Late items beyond that, and camera items to be released, none. Resolution to adjourn, fastest meeting in the history of the world.
Yeah.
All in favor? Councillor Renwick, Councillor Lochtenberg, carried, thank you.
Okay.
Sarah? Thanks, folks, we're
That's
done.
it.
You can go home.
We're not
early.
all like this, Brendan.
Yeah.